There's so much talk about what's going on with Israel. Which Republican or Democratic candidate is more pro-Israel? Whether Israel will bomb the Iranian nuclear program. A quick word about that. We all know the specter of Iran having nuclear capability and weapons cannot be tolerated, but at the same time, were Israel to undertake military action against Iran, we need to admit, and Israel knows this, it will do exactly what the mullahs, the radical Muslims in Iran, want, to stir up the masses and deflect their attention away from their anger at the mullahs and the theocracy to blaming Israel. And that's why, while the press is talking about this and Americans are saying Israel should bomb Iran, the Israelis are very wary about doing it because they know that it will probably keep the Iranian regime in power for another 10 to 15 years if they use the blame Israel again. There is an internal threat to Israel, though, a threat that you're not reading about enough. Definitely not in the American Jewish community. But if you are an Israeli, you're reading about it. Why are we not hearing about the internal threat to Israel? It's for the same reason that a Jew who I love considers me their rabbi, even though they're not a member of this congregation. And yet, when I asked about the image of the ideal Jew, it was the picture of an ultra-Orthodox from yeshiva. In popular movies and even around the Jewish community, the ultra-Orthodox, the black hat, Haredi, that's the Hebrew word for ultra-Orthodox Jews, you take pictures of when you go to the Western Wall. They're thought of as the real Jews. They're the most traditional, the most committed, the most religious. All the rest of us, I don't mean just Reform and Conservative, even the modern Orthodox, according to these, quote, real Jews, the rest of us have given in to modernity and our desires. This is how some Jews quietly think, the ones who look like Eastern Europe are the strong ones. And while we might not want to live that way, some Jews think that that image, that person, that ultra-Orthodox Jew is guaranteeing our Jewish future. Think again. They are not guaranteeing the Jewish future. They are undermining it. Sure, as J. Michelson writes, by having very large families, they are producing more Jews. But the Jewish future they would create and are creating in Israel with nobody talking about it looks more like Islamist Iran than any Jewish society you or I or the vast majority of Jews in America or Israel would ever want to be a part of. Within the past few years, as American Jews lobby Congress, we turn our backs on what's really happening within Israel. Religious Zionism, which was once about being modern and orthodox, and opening the academic world of research and promoting the status of women, has morphed into Jewish fundamentalism. What do I mean? There is a national religious party in Israel. It's an ultra-Orthodox party, and it now advocates separation from secular society, distancing oneself from the academic world, lowering the status of women, including moving women to separate seats and sections of buses, hostile attitudes towards non-Jews, and taking on the state's legal institutions while directly or indirectly giving legitimizations to lawbreakers for the ultra-Orthodox cause. because we all know when religion and government get in bed with each other, both suffer. And in Israel, the ultra-Orthodox are in bed with the government. A few weeks ago, in case you didn't read about this, we all read about Iran, we all read about the Israel lobby, how we need to be pro-Israel. Why isn't there outrage over this? An innocent, modestly dressed 8-year-old girl who goes to a religious modern Orthodox day school named Naama Margulies was spat on and vilified by religious extremists, all men, all Jewish, who believe that she did not dress modestly enough while walking past them to the religious school she attends. And more public buses in Israel are enforcing gender segregation imposed by ultra-Orthodox riders in their neighborhoods. Majority rule, they say. Woe to the girl or woman who refuses to move to the back of the bus. How many wake-up calls do we need, Michelson asks? And why have the majority of Jews, American Jews, remained silent? Well, there's the reluctance to name Jewish fundamentalism for what it is. There's the false nostalgia of Fiddler on the Roof, which depicts the ultra-Orthodox as cuddly and quaint, rather than, as they often are, misogynist and actively desirous publicly of taking over Israeli civic institutions. My dad, alav shalom, sang better than Zero Mostel, Fiddler on the Roof. But this Jewish fundamentalism is not powerless Tevye and Anatevka in an isolated shtetl. These are powerful, focused, highly sophisticated operations out of New York, Israel, that take money and go after money of the least observant Jews who think they're helping the Jewish future. Not everyone who wears a black hat or sheitel is that way. But nobody is speaking up. Nobody's willing to stand up to the right fringe, including in the Orthodox world, for fear of being seen as less frum for doing so. Why should any Jew subsidize an ideology that threatens us all, especially this week? This is the week when both the Torah and Haftarah prophetic readings contain songs of thanksgiving to God by women who participate in our people's redemption. It wasn't just Moses. Miriam sang the song of the sea after escaping slavery in Egypt. It's not just Barak. Deborah sings when our people are delivered from the Amorites in the book of Judges. I'm not suggesting that in biblical times men and women were equal or there was interchangeable authority. That would be to impose a contemporary bias on Jewish history. But to say that Jewish women were merely passive members of a male society, an object and never a subject, a follower and never a leader, is to be untrue to what we're supposed to read in the Torah this week. It's a perversion of Judaism to judge a female human being through a man's sexualized imagination. Once you do, you can even turn an 8-year-old girl into a prostitute and seductress, as she was called in Hebrew. The reason that the Talmud forbids a man to gaze sexually at a woman isn't the woman's fault. It's the male gaze, the way men look at women that needs to be desexualized, not women in public. The power to make sure men don't see women as objects of sexual gratification lies within men's control, and only men's control. The Orthodox rabbi, this isn't some reform liberal screed. Let me quote to you the Orthodox rabbi Dov Linzer. He put it well when he said, both women and men should be modest in their dress. But modesty is not defined by or even primarily about how much of one's body is covered. It's about behavior. Which brings us to Cambodia, where I brought 5 extraordinary women from the greater Memphis community with me last week. It was chronicled on Fox 13 News. You can watch the segment online. But let me share with you what the piece doesn't cover. The piece explains the what, the first genocide after the Holocaust committed against educated people by Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. The piece covers the slaughter of more than 1/4 of an entire nation and their Holocaust museum that is housed in a school where 20,000 children, mostly children, went through, and 19,993 died there. Only 7 survived. In 1979, the piece covers that, and the brilliant member of our Temple Israel family, Alan Lightman, who conceived this Harpswell project that I have visited twice and that we've supported for over 6 years since the very beginning. This what in the Fox News cast is very compelling, but it's the why that moves me, and it relates to the Torah. The why this matters, whether it's fundamentalist Jews haranguing girls with the blame the victim mentality, her dress was too short, or restrictions in the Muslim world which are criminal and which keep them from the freedom Miriam and Deborah sing about this week. The why is this matters. The why this matters is that the response to the evil of violence, of rape, of oppression of women throughout the world has to be the same opportunity for girls that boys have. Walking to school, going to school, getting an education. The women we're supporting at Harpswell are among the first girls in an entire nation ever to attend college. And guess what? Not only girls, but the entire nation is doing better as a result. When you invest in girls, you end poverty and death, not when you demean them and condone it as a Jew. What do I mean that if you invest in girls, you can end death? Many of you have heard about nothing but nets. You know about that? Malaria-infested mosquitoes kill tens of thousands of babies in Africa, I think monthly. For $5, Nothing But Nets sends a net to an African family. It's not a gimmick. It is true. You pay $5, it goes right to the family. What's the problem? The $5 goes to the male head of the household, who spends the $5 either at a brothel or on alcohol. If you gave the same $5 to the mother, she'd find a way to get the guy a drink, and most importantly, she would save her child. The 84 Harpswell girls in Cambodia who have become like sisters to me, they call Jean and Alan Lightman mom and dad. They really are the moms and dads of these girls. They asked me what my religious mission was about. And I saw Elie Wiesel's memoirs in their library at Harpswell. And I said, you know, that Jewish author, Elie Wiesel, put it well when he said, the mission of the Jew has never been to make the world more Jewish. It's to make the world more human. My mission, I told them, is not to make the world more Buddhist or Jewish or Christian or Muslim. It's to make the world more human, no matter what your spiritual path is or isn't. And then I said, just look at who I brought with me this time. You girls are almost all Asian Buddhists and a few Muslims. And we are Caucasian and African American Jews and Christians. One God means one humanity, and that same one God must love diversity, just look at us, and that same God must cry when we remain silent as girls are demeaned, and worse, in our own Jewish state. During free time, when I wasn't with the girls, I met with one of Cambodia's chief monks, along with 2 others. He's the one who brought Cambodian Buddhists back together with Thailand and Vietnam following the genocide only 30 years ago. And Yoshat taught me something which speaks to freeing people from oppression now rather than seeing the Moses and Miriams as just once upon a time you're going to read at your Passover Seder in April. I asked him, aren't you angry or mad about the slaughter Of the 50,000 rabbis, monks, Pol Pot massacred 50,000 monks. Many were colleagues and friends of this man I've grown to love. Where was his anger? Well, it was explained to me this way. There's enough anger within Yoshat, enough energy to be angry. Can you imagine the loss of 50,000 of your friends? But for him, if you channel that energy wisely, a Buddhist teacher taught me who was with him, it can become determination and not anger. Determination in the present, not anger in the past. And then the light bulb in my follow-up conversation that I'll abbreviate was this. Jews, Yoshat, this monk, this senior leader in Cambodia taught me, Jews are very good at remembering. And he said to me last year, and in a follow-up email, how you remember your ancestors is beautiful to me. In fact, his denomination of Buddhism, Theravada, means doctrine of the elders. It's not the Dalai Lama Mahayana version. They have different denominations in Buddhism. His is all about remembering ancestors, doctrine of the elders. It's very important. But here's the big but. He said, when you attach yourself too much to the past, it leads to disappointment. And then wanting to make me feel better, he said, Christians have another problem. They focus too much on the future. All some Christians talk about is heaven, the future, getting saved, going to hell or going to heaven. Heaven is fine. Earth is where all the problems are. What Yoshat in Cambodia, as I close, reminds us is remember the past, don't forget it, but don't attach yourself too much to it. It'll prevent you, as Moses and Miriam at the shores of the sea, it'll prevent us from speaking up about the Haredi wall of silence, about sexual abuse. Face what's really going on right now. Not your idealized attachments to the past, not your fears for the future, but the moment right now. Because all it takes for evil to triumph, as you know, is for good people to do nothing. The first girls going to college in Cambodia are responding to the deaths of their grandparents and their uncles and their aunts for having an education. With a new vision for girls and boys throughout their nation, they're going to get the education that their uncles, their aunts, and their grandparents died for. When will we get serious about what's happening now in looking at the vibrancy of our future? Fundamentalism, the threat of Jewish fundamentalism, is not our friend. It is not Israel's friend. It is not anyone's friend. Freedom is. Exodus 15:20 reads, Then the Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her in dance. In closing, Dr. Ellen Frankel, in the 5 books of Miriam, writes, Ancient Mediterranean cultures have left compelling evidence in clay of a widespread women's performance tradition. Women specialized in the art of song, drum, and dance. And now, today, musical instruments have been almost completely eliminated from traditional prayer services. And among the most fundamentalist Jews, the voice of a woman has been silenced, kol isha, in the presence of men, because it allegedly stirs up sexual thoughts in men. So what were the Israelite men thinking when they heard Miriam and the women singing? They were thinking about freedom. They were thinking about beauty. Have men and women changed so much since then? We mustn't be silent on the subjugation of women, whether Jewish or other. We are called as Jews to heal the hurt and bring shalom to the brokenness surrounding us in the here and now. Then can we see our lives more clearly in tonight and tomorrow's Torah text, and also feel the text live through us, wherever we sit, wherever we go, wherever we stand. Amen.